As I'm standing here right now, I'm standing with soft knees. My quads aren't overly engaged, neither are my hamstrings, and weight is just kind of falling backwards towards the back capsule of my knee and resting on my feet. Everyone has a natural standing alignment, but when it comes to being active and strengthening your muscles, you're going to want to pull that alignment and get your joints stacked on top of each other a little bit better, meaning you have to keep weight moving through your knee instead of back into it. Whether it's from soft knees like I am now or an overengaged quad that is actually pushing me towards a hyperextension. Being born hyperextended is not the same thing as shoving yourself there. So we're going to look at footwork on the reformer to really explore this idea of what is weight back in the knee versus a straight knee versus a lock knee versus what I really cannot stand to cue, a soft knee. Not when we're looking for strength, particularly when you're loaded with springs or any other kind of weight. So looking at it from the side, if I stand in that soft knee, you see how weight kind of tips back and its weight is falling back into my heel. And what you don't see, because only I can feel it, is that it kind of supinates me a little bit out to the outer edge of my heel. Therefore, I'm not really engaged, and I'm letting my pelvis just let it be in its natural little bit of anterior tilt. This is how I'm going to stand at the grocery store, y'all. But I want enough muscle tonus that my bones aren't collapsing on each other. So when I get to work, I get to work. So I'm going to think about pulling into center, which immediately makes me lift low abs, pull pelvis up. And I want to bring my feet a little bit closer together. Now, here's the reality. If when standing, either you rest and soften weight back into the knees, there comes that anterior tilt back, here comes the relaxation in here. At the same time, if I grip and really push back to have really straight legs, now I am gripping the hell out of my glutes all around my sacrum, and it's actually pushing me into a posterior tilt. That's a little too much, right? Because it's not about the weight going back and forth in the knees, which is tough because when we start going into a new plane in space on the reformer, we see the knees bending and straightening. It looks like back and forth. It's an up and a down. And in this plane in space, it makes perfect sense. I'm pushing down on my feet. I'm standing up. When we lie down, that up is the shoulder blocks, the down is the foot bar. The strength in the knee is absorbing the weight of the torso above, but receiving the intel from the floor and how much force we need to push back up. When we lie that down here in a moment, you're going to see how taking the weight back and forth, or when we lie down up and down, changes this interaction with our feet, our ankles, and how we line everything up for our active position. So let's take it to the reformer. We're down on the reformer. I'm on 4 springs so you can see my muscles work. Now, take a moment when you get down here to remember what it felt like standing a moment ago, to have weight going down into the floor, which is now the foot bar, and standing up into space through your shoulders, which are now blocked by the shoulder blocks. So you're really in your equipment, right? As you stretch out into the springs, you're standing up into gravity, which is now the pull of the springs trying to pull you down. Stand up into. I'm going to bring my arms down so you can see my feet now. Now, as you bend in, that's the thing. We don't want to fall down and let the springs just pull us in. We're actually resisting. If you're on a reformer with drag, you know darn well you have to pull yourself in. But if you're not, you don't want to just let go and let the springs bang and click, and then you've just let go of everything. Because then you're going to have to regather it. And you might see that happen on your clients. They come in, they let go, and then they're like, okay, I'll go out again. There's no letting go. Keep pushing the bar away because you would not fall down in a squat if you were standing. You'd keep pushing the floor away. We're choosing heels together. We're choosing heels lifted, not dropped and straining the Achilles, but really putting the weight into the tarsal bones, into the metatarsal, and into the bar. Push the bar away and reach up and bend in. Now look what happens if I only think about squeezing knees together. And you see how now I've pronated because I'm not actually using my full adductors. I'm just using a little adductor down around the knee, right? If I bring my heels back together and think squeeze in, high groin squeeze together, that's a very different feeling through all of the quadriceps and the inner thighs, right? And I need that feeling because when I was standing, that's what you don't realize when you're standing keeps you from falling backwards. Watch. Inner thighs now not engaging at all, just thinking heels together. You're going to see that fall down in the knees. Now look how look at the difference in the engagement of my quads. The inner thighs are some sneaky, sneaky mofos when it comes to the knees and how to keep weight going into the feet and hips versus swinging back and forth. Because my inner thighs and my hamstrings have to engage to keep me from falling back. But that work in my feet. Now we're going to change the position of the feet, okay? Let's go to a parallel. And let's go a little bit apart now, right? We just talked about inner thighs. Inner thighs still have to do their supportive work when they're apart, right? They're keeping the track down into the ankles so we're not resting out in supination or inverting, everting, right? Find the track to your feet. As I press out, this is going to be even more clear. If I let go of that center line, and I have to think about it for a second, let go of your inner thighs, let go of your inner thighs. You're going to see let go of everywhere. You're going to see ankles kind of collapse. And I'm almost hanging down out of the bar now and then come in. Now watch the rebounding effect as weight falls in the knees, right? And weight falls in the knees. Now, if this is happening, there's no amount of cueing core that's actually going to stabilize the spine and pelvis because there's no solidity and there's no work in the hips that's actually sending the intel up into the spine. What's going to end up happening is a bracing, all right? And a popping. That's the weight going back and forth because the quads, inner thighs, and hamstrings aren't doing their job to have that reciprocal inhibition so that as I straighten, the quads pull the patella up, the inner thighs work to keep a track and to keep me center. The hamstrings are contracting high up in the hip socket concentrically to pull together what I like to call your foot, right. The lower hamstring is eccentrically lengthening. The top of the quad as the hip flexor is long. Now, all of that is a lot to think of. So find your feet and stand and push, and you'll feel your core work snatch right up. It just snatches right up. And bend in. If I take this onto my heels, you get a little bit more conversation into the backyard. That's what heels do. They drive up into the back of you a little bit easier, but then you have to find the opposition to not let it yank your pelvis. The stronger your hips and thighs get, the more you automatically have to work to absorb all of that force and intel and be able to pull the spring with you. Okay, so if you've got issues with your clients or your classes just dropping and dropping and dropping in their footwork, bring them standing. Do some footwork standing. Let them feel what the difference between knees dropping back and forth or going up and down is, and then take them to the reformer. And I recommend you do all of that well before feet and straps, which we're going to talk about next.